For decades, one rivalry has kept the Middle East on edge. Every few years, the world sees the same headlines. Missiles, drones, airstrikes, in fears of a much bigger war. But why does this conflict never seem to end? If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into it. Israel and Iran do not share a border. They are not fighting over the same land. In fact, there was a time when the two countries worked together. So what changed? Why did friendship turn into hostility? And why has this rivalry lasted for decades? To find the answer, we have to go back more than 100 years, because this story began long before the first missile was fired. The end of an empire. At the start of the 20th century, the Middle East looked completely different. There was no Israel, and many modern countries didn't even exist. Most of the region was ruled by one huge power, the Ottoman Empire. But by the early 1900s, the empire was collapsing. It had suffered military defeats, its economy was weakening, and nationalist movements were gaining strength across its territories. Then came the biggest disaster of all, World War I. The Ottoman Empire joined Germany and its allies. When the war ended in defeat, the empire collapsed with them. Almost overnight, huge parts of the Middle East were left without a government. Britain and France quickly stepped in. They divided much of the region into new territories, drawing borders that still exist today. One of those territories was called Mandatory Palestine. It was home to Arab Muslims, Arab Christians, and a smaller Jewish population. For centuries, these communities had lived there under different rulers. At the same time, many Jewish people across Europe were facing discrimination, violence, and persecution. This led to the rise of Zionism, a movement that argued Jewish people needed a homeland where they could govern themselves and live safely. For many, Palestine was the obvious choice because of its historical and religious importance. During the 1920s and 1930s, more Jewish immigrants moved to Palestine. Many Arab Palestinians feared they would eventually lose control of their land and their future. As those fears grew, so did the violence. Britain struggled to keep peace between the two communities. Then the world was shaken by another catastrophe. World War II. The Holocaust, in which Nazi Germany murdered 6 million Jewish people, transformed international opinion. After the war, support for creating a Jewish homeland became stronger than ever. In 1947, the United Nations proposed dividing Palestine into two countries, one Jewish and one Arab. Jewish leaders accepted the plan. Many Arab leaders rejected it, saying it was unfair because Arabs made up most of the population. On May 14, 1948, Israel declared independence. The very next day, neighboring Arab countries invaded. Many believed the new country would quickly disappear. Instead, Israel won the war and captured even more land than it had been given under the UN plan. For Israelis, this was the birth of their nation. For Palestinians, it became known as the Nakba, or the catastrophe. Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians fled or were forced from their homes. Many ended up as refugees, and millions of their descendants still live as refugees today. That painful chapter remains one of the biggest reasons the conflict continues. But where was Iran in all of this? Surprisingly, it wasn't part of the conflict at first. Iran is not an Arab country. Most Iranians are Persian, and Iran doesn't even share a border with Israel. In fact, during the 1950s and 1960s, the two countries had friendly relations. They traded with each other, shared intelligence, and quietly worked together on security. Everything changed after the Iranian Revolution. Before the revolution, Iran was ruled by Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, a close ally of both the United States and Israel. He wanted to modernize the country, but many Iranians believed he had become too authoritarian and too dependent on the West. Their anger was also shaped by an earlier event. In 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh nationalized Iran's oil industry. Britain strongly opposed the decision, and in 1953, a coup backed by American and British intelligence removed him from power. The Shah returned with even greater authority. Many Iranians never forgot that foreign powers had helped decide their country's future. In 1979, the Shah was overthrown. Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini returned from exile and created the Islamic Republic of Iran. Almost overnight, everything changed. Iran cut ties with Israel, handed Israel's embassy in Tehran to the Palestine Liberation Organization, and declared Israel and the United States its main enemies. Even so, the two countries avoided fighting each other directly. Instead, Iran chose a different approach. Rather than going to war with Israel itself, it began supporting armed groups across the Middle East. These groups, often called proxies, received different levels of funding, weapons, training, or political support from Iran while operating independently. The strongest of these groups was Hezbollah in Lebanon. Backed by Iran, Hezbollah built a powerful military force and became one of Israel's biggest security threats. Whenever tensions rose, rockets crossed the border, Israel responded with airstrikes, and both sides prepared for the next round of fighting. Iran also strengthened ties with Hamas, the Palestinian group that governs Gaza. Although Hamas is Sunni and Iran is mainly Shia, both shared the goal of resisting Israel. Over the years, Iran provided financial support, weapons, and military training. Israel accused Iran of helping Hamas expand its military capabilities, while Iran said it supported Palestinian resistance but did not control Hamas's decisions. By this point, Israel was no longer facing threats from just one direction. It now had powerful Iranian-backed groups on both its northern border with Lebanon and in Gaza to the south. The nuclear question, then another issue pushed the rivalry to a whole new level: Iran's nuclear program. Iran has always said its nuclear program is for peaceful purposes like generating electricity and medical research. Israel has never been convinced. Israeli leaders feared that if Iran ever developed a nuclear weapon, it could become a direct threat to Israel's survival. But instead of fighting an open war, the two countries entered what became known as the Shadow War. Iranian nuclear scientists were assassinated. Cyber attacks targeted key nuclear facilities. Israel carried out airstrikes in Syria to destroy weapons believed to be heading to Hezbollah. Iran responded with cyber attacks and attacks through allied groups. Even ships linked to both countries were mysteriously attacked at sea. Most of the time, neither side officially admitted responsibility, but it was obvious that the conflict had simply moved into the shadows. In 2015, there was finally hope. Iran signed a nuclear agreement with several world powers. In exchange for limiting its nuclear program, many international sanctions were lifted. Supporters believed the deal could prevent another major conflict. Israel disagreed. It argued that the agreement only delayed the problem instead of solving it. 3 years later, the United States pulled out of the deal and restored sanctions on Iran. Iran gradually stopped following parts of the agreement, trust broke down, and hopes for diplomacy faded once again. By 2024, the Shadow War was becoming a real one. In April, Israel bombed the Iranian consulate annex in Damascus, Syria, killing 2 Iranian generals and several senior IRGC officers. Iran responded days later by launching more than 300 drones and missiles toward Israel. It was the first direct Iranian attack on Israeli territory, although almost all of the missiles and drones were intercepted. Then in October, Iran launched another missile attack. It said the strike was retaliation for Israel's assassinations of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh in Tehran, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah in Beirut, and senior IRGC commander Abbas Nilfarushan. Israel answered with strikes deep inside Iran, damaging much of its air defense network and showing it could reach almost anywhere in the country. But to understand why everything spiraled so quickly, we have to go back to October 7, 2023. On that day, Hamas carried out the deadliest attack on Jewish people since the Holocaust. Around 1,200 Israelis were killed, and roughly 250 people were taken hostage. Israel's response was immediate and overwhelming. Its military launched a full-scale invasion of Gaza. By the end of 2024, more than 40,000 Palestinians had been killed, according to Gaza health authorities, with women and children making up a large share of the casualties. The United Nations described the humanitarian situation as catastrophic. At the same time, a growing number of international legal scholars began using the word genocide to describe Israel's actions, while Israel firmly rejected that accusation. The war in Gaza changed everything. Iran's allies became more active, tensions spread across the Middle East, and the risk of a direct war between Israel and Iran became greater than ever. Then came February 28, 2026. The United States and Israel launched a massive military operation against Iran called Operation Epic Fury. US B-2 bombers and Israeli fighter jets struck military targets across the country, including sites in Tehran. Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and several senior commanders were killed. A strike on a girls' school reportedly killed at least 165 children. Iran struck back almost immediately. Missiles and drones targeted countries across the Middle East, and the Strait of Hormuz was declared closed, putting global oil supplies at risk. So where does it all go from here? No one knows. Will Iran's government survive? Could this become a much larger regional war? Or will diplomacy somehow return before it's too late? What is certain is that none of this happened overnight. The conflict we see today is the result of more than a century of history, shaped by wars, revolutions, foreign intervention, proxy battles, and decades of mistrust. The story is still unfolding, and no one knows how it will end. But now you know how it began. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that explain the world around us. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.